Foran, you've made two hugely successful movies in the last couple of years. I remember seeing you as a singer and dancer, but that was a long time ago. 4 hours passed before someone called for help after Natalie Wood went missing. Why did Robert Wagner stop the captain from searching? Why did his story keep changing? Why did he refuse to help when the case was reopened? After 42 years of secrets and lies, new evidence finally shows what happened on the yacht Splendor. The mystery that haunted Hollywood may finally be solved. Natalie Wood was born on July 20, 1943. Natalia Nikolayevna Zachary was born in San Francisco in 1938. Her parents, Maria and Nikolai, were Russian immigrants who had fled a hard life in Russia. They had a hard time in America, but Maria dreamed that her daughter would become a big star. Natalie became interested in acting in a strange way when she was only 4 years old, when her family moved to Santa Rosa and bought a house. During a local movie shoot, she caught the attention of the film crew and they wanted her to be in the shoot. Her role was tiny, but it didn't go unnoticed. Soon after, she had a brief 15-second scene in the movie Happy Land. Even though these roles were small, they caught the attention of the Natalie Pischel was noticed by director Irving Pischel, who kept in touch with her family for 2 years and was always on the lookout for her next big break. One day, Michel called Natalie's mother with good news. There was a role opening up, and he thought Natalie would be perfect for it. He suggested they bring her to Los Angeles for a screen test. Natalie's mother, Maria, didn't waste any time. She packed up the whole family and moved to Los Angeles right away, determined to make Natalie a star. Her father didn't agree with this risky move, but Maria's ambition won out. She believed Natalie was destined for greatness and nothing would stop her. Natalie was only 7 years old at the time. Natalie had to cry on cue in an emotional scene, but she couldn't. In a shocking moment, her mother tore apart a butterfly right in front of her to make her cry. The tears worked, but it was a hard experience for such a young child. Orson Welles later said Natalie was so talented it was almost scary. She doesn't act from the script, she acts from the heart. Natalie continued to work with Michael in his movie The Bride Wore Boots. After that, she joined 20th Century Fox and played Gene Tierney's daughter in The Ghost and Mrs. Natalie proved she wasn't just a pretty face, she was a natural talent who could hold her own with big stars in 1947's Miracle on 34th Street. She played a smart but skeptical little girl who didn't believe in Santa Claus until she met a kind department store employee played by Edmund Gwenn, who just might be the real Santa. The movie was a huge hit and became a beloved Christmas classic. After the movie, Natalie became one of the most famous child stars in Hollywood. She was so popular that Macy's invited her to join their Thanksgiving Day parade, an honor that not many kids ever get. Natalie had to study on the studio lot while she was filming because she was a minor. California law said she had to spend at least 3 hours a day in the classroom until she turned 18. Natalie was an A-plus student and especially good at math. Director Joseph L. Amant, who worked with her on The Ghost and Miss Mere 1947, called her the smartest kid he'd ever met. But Natalie felt bad about it because she knew the film crew had to wait for her to finish school every day. As soon as her teacher let her go, she would run straight to the set because she didn't want to waste any time. Natalie's life might sound glamorous, but at only 8 years old, she had to. They worked long hours, sometimes 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. They were under a lot of emotional and physical stress, but no one seemed to care. All that mattered was giving the best performance for the camera. Natalie Wood's life changed forever when she starred in Rebel Without a Cause in 1955. The movie was about teenage rebellion, and critics loved how she made Judy's feelings feel real. Getting this role wasn't easy for Natalie. Director Nicholas Ray didn't think she could play a rebellious teenager because she had always played innocent children. He tried other actresses like Debbie Reynolds, but Natalie wouldn't give up. She even told him she was pregnant. When Natalie finally got the part, she worked hard to prepare, but things got complicated behind the scenes. She was only 16 when she started dating the 43-year-old director Rye. At the time, it was seen as part of her dedication to the role, but later she said it was painful and wrong. Filming Rebel Without a Cause wasn't easy. Natalie and her co-star, Dennis Hopper, were in a car accident during production, but she wasn't seriously hurt. It added to the movie's edgy reputation. Then tragedy struck when James Dean, the lead actor, died in a car accident right after filming ended. Natalie's performance as Judy stood out. She gave the character depth and emotion, which impressed both audiences and critics. At the 1,956 Oscars, she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, but didn't win. It was a big moment for her career, showing she had what it took to be a Hollywood star. That same year, she won a Golden Globe as the most promising newcomer. This success opened doors for Natalie. In 1961, she starred in two huge hits, Splendor in the Grass and West Side Story. In Splendor in the Grass, she played Deanie, a young woman dealing with. Natalie put in a lot of work for this role, even going to mental hospitals to study patients. One scene where she has a takedown in a bathtub was so emotional that it was filmed in just one take. The movie was a hit, and Natalie was nominated for another Oscar for Best Actress. Right after that, she played Maria in West Side Story, a Puerto Rican girl in love with someone from a rival gang. Her singing voice was dubbed by someone else, but her acting was praised, and the movie won 10 Oscars, including Best Picture. These two movies made Natalie one of the biggest stars in Hollywood at the age of 23. Natalie played a woman dealing with an unplanned pregnancy in the 1963 movie Love with the Proper Stranger. The movie was groundbreaking for its time because it talked about issues like abortion that weren't often seen in Hollywood at the time. One scene where Natalie's character goes through a scary abortion attempt was improvised and incredibly emotional, and it earned her a third Oscar nomination. Even with all of this success, Natalie had trouble with the roles she was offered. She didn't want to be stuck in the same kinds of roles, so she paid $175,000 to cancel her contract with Warner Brothers in 1966. She turned down big movies like Barefoot in the Park because Natalie Wood's career took a big turn when she starred in Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice in 1969. After taking a break from movies for 3 years, her return was nothing short of remarkable, and the movie, which came out on September 17, 1969, became an instant hit that made $31. Natalie played Carol Sanders, a brave and modern character who explored open relationships. Her performance earned her a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress in a Motion Picture. In the 1970s, Natalie moved from big movies to TV roles because she wanted to spend more time with her family and because of changes in the entertainment industry. Her first big TV project was The Affair, which aired in 1973 and starred a married woman having an affair. It was a huge hit, seen by about 30 million people. In 1979, she starred in the miniseries From Here to Eternity, which was a big deal at the time. Natalie's performance won her first Golden Globe for Best Actress after 7 nominations. She also played Maggie in a TV version of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in 1976. Critics loved her performance as the famously badass Elizabeth Taylor had played the part before. This move to TV happened during a turning point in her life. She married Robert Wagner again in 1972 after being divorced for 10 years and focused on her family, which meant she didn't act as much. She only did 4 movies in the 1970s, which was a big change from how busy she had been. She acted in many movies in the 1950s and 1960s, but her last one, Brainstorm, a sci-fi thriller released in 1981, was very sad. Natalie played a scientist working on a machine that could record human experiences. The movie used new and exciting technology like 70mm film to make the scenes look more realistic. Natalie died while filming on November 29, 1981, at the age of 43. She had finished most of her scenes, but production stopped because of her death. The studio even tried to cancel the movie to get insurance money, but the director fought hard to finish it as a tribute to her. Body doubles were used in creative ways, and Natalie's sister stood in for a shot. 1983, almost 2 years later, even though it didn't do well at the box office, people praised it for its special effects and ideas. Over time, Brainstorm became a cult favorite and is now seen as an important movie in the history of science fiction. Natalie Wood's first marriage to Robert Wagner was like a Hollywood dream. She met Wagner when she was 10 years old and told her mother she wanted to marry him one day. When Natalie was 18, they started dating and quickly became in love. They got married on December 28, 1957, in Scottsdale, Arizona. Everyone thought they were the perfect couple and called them Hollywood's golden pair. Natalie's acting career was taking off, but Robert's wasn't doing as well. This caused tension between them, and on June 20, 1961, they announced their separation. Their divorce was final on April 27, 1962. After the breakup, Natalie started dating Warren Beatty. Their relationship was messy and full of fights, which Natalie later called chaotic, while Robert struggled to deal with his feelings for Natalie. Natalie's second marriage was to British producer Richard Gregson, whom she met through friend and actor Robert Redford. They dated for 3 years and got married on May 30, 1969, in a Russian Orthodox church in California. At first, things seemed good. Natalie had been having mental health problems after her first marriage and the breakup with Beatty. She felt more stable with Richard. In September 1970, they had a daughter named Natasha, which made Natalie very happy. But their happiness didn't last. Natalie became so focused on being a mom that Richard felt left out, which led Richard to have an affair with Natalie's friend. Natalie was angry with her secretary, so she kicked him out and filed for divorce on August 4, 1971. Their marriage ended on April 12, 1972. Meanwhile, Natalie and Robert Wagner's story didn't end with their divorce. After almost 10 years apart, they found their way back to each other. By that time, both had remarried, Natalie to Richard Gregson and Robert to actress Marion Marshall. But by early 1972, they were both single again, and in January they reconnected and fell back in love almost right away. Their relationship moved so quickly that even Natalie was surprised. She said that friends told her to slow down, but she felt that both she and Robert had, during their time apart, she thought Robert had finally grown into the man she had always wanted him to be. On July 16, 1972, they got married again, this time on the yacht Ramblin' Rose, which was anchored off of Malibu. It was a romantic and special wedding, and their second marriage seemed stronger than the first. They had a daughter, Courtney, in 1974. and Robert became a loving stepfather to Natasha. But their happiness was tragically cut short in 1981 when Natalie Wood died at sea in what should have been a relaxing trip to Catalina Island. She got on the yacht Splendor with her husband Robert Wagner, co-star Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain Dennis Davern. They were supposed to bring more friends, but in the end it was just the four of them. The trip began peacefully on November 27th when they left Marina del Rey and anchored at Avalon, a small town on the island. Natalie, Robert, and Christopher went shopping and had drinks ashore, while Dennis stayed on the boat. The next day, Wagner decided to move the yacht to a quieter spot called Two Harbors because of bad weather. It was cold, windy, and rainy, with rough waters, not the best place for a relaxing weekend. That evening, the group went to, around 5 p.m., Doug's Harbor Reef, the only restaurant in Two Harbors, opened and began drinking a lot. They had champagne, wine, and cocktails, more than enough for everyone to be drunk by the time they left at 10:30 p.m. The restaurant staff could tell they were drunk because they were acting out loud and someone even threw a glass at the wall. The manager of the restaurant was worried about their safety and asked a harbor patrol officer to make sure they got back to their yacht without any problems. The group used a small dinghy called Natalie had no alcohol in her blood when she went back to the Splendor later, according to a toxicology study. Her level of intoxication, 14%, which is almost twice the legal limit for driving, became a key part of trying to figure out what happened that night. Wagner said he last saw Wood around 10:45 p.m. He said he heard Wood and Wagner arguing loudly on the deck around 11:05 p.m., which was after she went to bed. He remembered Wagner telling him to get off the boat, and then everything went away. At almost the same time, Marilyn Wayne, a woman on a nearby boat, said she heard a woman pleading for help. The voice said, "Help me, someone. Please help me, I'm drowning," several times over the course of about 15 minutes. Dad's story and Wayne's account of the cries sound a lot alike, which raises a lot of questions. When Dav checked after the noise stopped, he saw Wagner alone on the deck. He looked sweaty, nervous, and messy. That's when Wagner told him that Natalie was missing. Wagner's strange behavior at this point has been a major source of suspicion ever since Natalie had said, "I'm afraid of dark water." Many people don't understand why Natalie would leave the boat at night on her own. The search for Natalie began hours late, Davern said. They realized she was missing at 11:05 p.m., but no one called for help until 1:30 a.m. It wasn't until 3:30 a.m. that the Coast Guard was called. That's more than 4 hours after she went missing. Roger Smith, the captain of the rescue boat that found her body, said he didn't even know she was missing until 5:11 a.m. Smith said she probably cried for help for hours. "I've always thought she could have been saved because of these delays." To make things even stranger, Davern said Wagner told him not to turn on the yacht's floodlights to look for her. Wagner allegedly said, "We don't want to alert all these people." This decision has been heavily criticized over the years. Her body was found at 8 a.m. the next morning. She was floating face down about a mile from the boat. She was dressed in a nightgown, a red jacket, and blue wool socks. The yacht's dinghy Prince Valiant washed up on rocks nearby. Some experts said it looked like Natalie may have held on to the dinghy before she drowned, but no one knows for sure. Roger Smith, who found Natalie's body, said her fingers were still flexible when she was pulled from the water, which meant she hadn't been dead for long and could have lived in the water for hours. An autopsy showed she had bruises on her arms and legs and a scrape on her cheekbone. The bruise on her arm looked like a defense wound, which led some people to think she fought someone before she fell into the water. 0.4% of her body was found to be impaired by drugs like painkillers, motion sickness pills, and alcohol, which may have made her unsteady and impaired her judgment, which may have caused her to fall. The coroner, Dr. Thomas Noguchi, ruled that she died of accidental drowning the next day. He said she probably fell while trying to get on the dinghy and struggled to climb back up. Scratches on the dinghy supported this idea, but people still asked why she would leave the yacht in the middle of the night. Noguchi later admitted he forgot to collect important evidence like nail scrapings that could have shown if there was a struggle. There was still a lot of mystery surrounding Natalie Wood's death. On November 18, 2011, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department announced that they would be reopening the case. This was because Dennis Dav, captain of the yacht Splendor, admitted that he hadn't been honest in 1981 in a book he wrote in 2009 and in interviews. He said that he had heard Natalie and her husband Robert Wagner having a terrible argument that night. He described it as intense and tense. The police didn't take this lying seriously, according to Lieutenant John Carina, who led the investigation. Investigators said they had tips from a number of sources, all of which seemed very credible. Also, forensic technology had come a long way since 1981, which gave them hope that they might find new clues to solve the case. They began interviewing the people who were on the yacht, Wagner, Wan, and Davern again. As the investigation went on, new witnesses came forward with scary stories. By February 2018, detectives had talked to over 100 people. John Payne and his girlfriend Marilyn Wayne were among them. They had been on a boat near the Splendor that night and said they heard a woman yelling, "Help me, please help me. Help me!" Around midnight, cries came from the direction of the Splendor, and they heard a man's voice that sounded drunk, saying, "Okay, honey, we'll get you." At the time, one of Natalie and Wagner's 12-year-old neighbors shared a disturbing memory. Natalie came to his house scared and saying that Wagner was going to kill her. She even stayed the night there. If this memory is true, it showed that Natalie and Wagner had a history of problems that no one had talked about before. In August 2012, something big happened. Natalie Wood's death certificate was changed. For years it said that she had drowned, but now it said she had died of a heart attack. It wasn't a random change. It came after months of investigation and showed that more and more people thought Natalie Wood's death wasn't just an accident. Robert Wagner's story about what happened the night she died has changed so many times over the years that people are starting to doubt him and wonder if he was involved. At first, Wagner said Wood went to bed around 10:45 p.m. On November 28, 1981, he said he didn't know she was missing until he went to find her later. But this story didn't last long, and things changed. In 2008, Wagner wrote a book called Pieces of My Heart, in which he admitted for the first time that he had argued with Wood that night. He said they had been drinking a lot, and he got into a big fight with Christopher Walken about Wood's career. Wagner even said he lost his temper, saying, "I picked up a wine bottle, slammed it on the table, and broke it into pieces." This was a big change from what he had said before, and it made people wonder how bad the argument really was. When the case was reopened in 2011, Wagner's story changed again. This time, he told investigators that Wood had stormed off the set. He later said that she had gone to bed quietly, but this new version was more in line with what the captain of the yacht, Dennis Davern, had been saying for years. One of the most suspicious things about Wagner is that he didn't help the investigation. When the case was reopened in 2018, Lieutenant John Carina from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department said, "I haven't seen him tell the details that match all the other witnesses." Because of this, Wagner was officially named a person of interest in Natalie Wood's death on February 1, 2018, almost 37 years after it happened. In one version of his story, Wagner said he looked for Wood for 15 minutes before calling for help. In another, he said it was hours before they called the police. These contradictions have made people doubt Wagner even more. Christopher Walken, who was on the yacht that night, has mostly kept quiet about what happened, but in a 2012 Playboy interview, he talked about his thoughts. Walken said, "On that night, only she knows what happened because she was alone. She went to bed before us and her room was in the back. A dinghy was bouncing against the side of the boat and I think she went out to move it. There was a ski ramp partially in the water. It was slippery and I had walked on it myself. She told me she couldn't swim. They had to cut a swimming scene from Brainstorm because she was probably half asleep and wearing a coat." Wagner's statement gave some information, but he wouldn't go into more detail about the night in question. Because of Wagner's changing stories and his refusal to cooperate, Natalie Wood's death has remained a mystery for decades. In 2021, Natalie Wood's sister Lana wrote a book that revealed a disturbing secret. When Natalie was 16, famous actor Kirk Douglas hurt her at a Douglas was a big star at the time, and Natalie's mom had set up a meeting with him at the Hollywood Hotel. But something went very wrong that night. When Natalie got back to the car, she was very upset and her clothes were all over the place. She whispered something urgently to their mom, Lana, who was only a little kid at the time. Lana knew something bad had happened, but she didn't know what. It wasn't until years later that Natalie told Lana the truth. "He hurt me, Lana." She said words that showed how much pain she'd been carrying. This story shows that even famous and successful people can hide deep hurts from the past. It also shows that Hollywood wasn't always the glamorous place it is today. It looked like it was a great spot for young artists trying to break into the business.